Newscast tonight. The nation's top office rules out the possibility of a drastic spike in South Korea's contribution to the upkeep of U.S. troops on the peninsula. The allies set the duration of their deal to a year, but the deadline can be extended. President Moon Jae-in vows to invest some $3.3 billion in building smart cities, with Busan and Sejong selected to be the first to undergo high-tech facelifts by the year 2021. Seoul signed a deal with Moscow to improve bilateral cooperation, centering on the so-called enrich strategy, which is part of President Moon's new northern policy. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program, Daniel Cha. We begin with apparent differences in Seoul and Washington's interpretation of their new defense cost-sharing agreement. South Korea will be shouldering an increased amount under the new deal, but officials ruled out the kind of massive spike that President Donald Trump mentioned recently. Shin Se-min has our top story.
Not an established fact, says South Korea's presidential office, speaking on the new defense cost-sharing deal agreed by Seoul and Washington. The Blue House spokesperson on Wednesday said the allies may agree to keep the deal at the current level after reviewing the need for an increase, and that Seoul hopes Washington does not consider another hike as an established fact, and also ruled out the possibility of sharply boosting Seoul's contribution toward the stationing of American troops on the peninsula. He added that the allies set the duration of their agreement to 1 year, but that deadline can be extended by another 12 months if both sides agree, apparently dismissing the possibility of an imminent increase. And South Korea's top diplomat also weighed in on the issue.
The amount we had agreed upon stands at $920 million. We will have to look into the background of where President Trump pulled that figure from, but we are sure of the contents the two sides have agreed.
Such an adamant dismissal comes only hours after remarks from the U.S. President Donald Trump, claiming Korea had agreed to pay an additional $500 million as part of its burden sharing for the U.S. forces in Korea.
They were paying about $500 million for $5 billion worth of protection, and we have to do better than that. So they've agreed to pay $500 million more, and over the years it'll start going up.
The agreement made by the two allies' diplomats shows that Seoul's share will go up to some $920 million, or some 8.2% from the original $850 million. And despite such a clash over the interpretation of the defense agreement, pressure from Washington on raising Seoul's share of the defense costs looks to continue, with the U.S. president already claiming the need to raise the price tag even before this week's agreement comes into effect. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
American troops need to stay in South Korea until a peace treaty is signed with the North. That's coming from General Robert Abrams as he was answering a question from the Senate Armed Services Committee on Tuesday, local time. The commander of USFK noted the former combatants have only signed an armistice agreement, merely a cessation of hostilities. Some in Seoul pointed out the general's remarks could mean that U.S. forces can withdraw once the parties have signed the peace deal. Responding to such concerns, South Korea's defense ministry pointed out on Wednesday that the allies share a firm understanding of the role and the importance of Washington's troops in maintaining peace and stability on the peninsula and in Northeast Asia, and that their presence is a matter of the two countries' alliance, not whether or not a peace treaty is signed. Just 2 weeks left until the second North Korea-U.S. summit. When preparing for the maiden meeting between the two leaders in Singapore, officials from both sides held talks in the host country to iron out logistics. Naturally, this time, more working-level sessions are expected to be held to finalize protocol for the big event. Lee Ji-won explains further.
With only 2 weeks left until the second North Korea-U.S. summit, the two sides are expected to accelerate their negotiations and preparations. Washington Special Representative for North Korea Stephen Biegun said Monday that the agenda for the summit has been set and that negotiations will start in the next round of talks with his new counterpart Kim Hyuk-chol, the official responsible for U.S. affairs on the North State Affairs Commission. According to South Korea's presidential office, the two sides will resume their talks in a third country in Asia next week. And these negotiations are expected to continue until the last minute before the summit, as they did ahead of the first Kim-Trump sit-down last June. Then, Pyongyang's Vice Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee met with Sung Kim, U.S. ambassador to the Philippines, 6 times in the truce village of Panmunjom from late May to early June. They also negotiated until the night before the leaders met. While Biegun and Kim will focus on the actual negotiations, another track is likely to be launched soon for logistics. That was the case back in Singapore. 2 weeks prior to that summit, the director of North Korea State Affairs Commission, Kim Chang-sun, met in the host country with Joe Hagan, White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations, and got started on protocol and logistics. Kim Chang-sun is likely to handle those issues again this time, but it's unclear whether the U.S. role will be taken by the current White House official in charge of operations, Daniel Walsh. And through their meetings, it's expected that the venue for the summit will be finalized, which in the case of the first summit happened only a week before D-Day. These officials will also visit the local hotels for their leaders, which are as of now widely believed to be the Melia Hanoi for Chairman Kim and the JW Marriott for President Trump. Meanwhile, Vietnam's foreign minister and its protocol chief are in Pyongyang right now at the invitation of the North's foreign minister, possibly touching on the logistics preparations ahead. 이지원, Arirang News.
Last year, Japan was urging pressure on North Korea, but now Tokyo has changed its stance. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is calling for a summit with leader Kim Jong-un, and according to local media, Japanese diplomats believe Pyongyang's denuclearization will not be a brisk process. Oh Jung-hee sheds light on these developments.
After President Trump meets with Kim Jong-un, the Japanese Prime Minister says it'll be his turn. At a meeting in Parliament on Tuesday, Shinzo Abe said situations surrounding North Korea have been changing dramatically since the Singapore summit, and that he thinks it's important that he be next to meet the North Korean leader face-to-face. Prime Minister Abe said he would try to break through the mutual mistrust and work to resolve the nuclear missile issues as well as the North's abductions of Japanese citizens in the 1970s and 80s. It appears the Abe administration's tone towards North Korea has softened a great deal compared to last year, and the Japanese media are taking note of that. Last year, around the first Kim-Trump summit, Abe stressed pressuring the North into complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization. But in his annual policy speech to Parliament earlier this year, the Prime Minister never mentioned pressuring the North. Instead, he said he'll work closely with the U.S. and South Korea and aim to ultimately normalize diplomatic ties with Pyongyang. According to the Tokyo Shimbun, senior Japanese diplomats have recently said North Korea's denuclearization cannot be done all at once. Watchers believe that the change in tone comes amid criticism of Tokyo for allowing itself to be, quote, bypassed in recent developments surrounding the Korean peninsula. Japanese media are also saying Tokyo has backed off in terms of its demands, considering America's willingness to move with the North in phases. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in attended a conference in Busan, the nation's second largest city. There, the South Korean leader stressed the significance of building up smart cities in order to boost innovative growth. Hwang Ho-jun has more from his tour of local economies.
High-tech street lamps that provide location-based safety services, park benches that feature smartphone charging services using solar power, crosswalks that display the walk signal when a pedestrian is crossing. According to President Moon Jae-in, smart cities will change the paradigm of everyday life.
스마트 시티는 4차 산업혁명의 요람입니다. 우리가 새롭게 만들어가야 할 미래 도시의 모습이며 우리의 삶을 더 안전하고 풍요롭게 꾸려줄 터전입니다.
And while the concept intends to create a safer, more efficient, and future-oriented city for the people, President Moon stressed it is also a platform for innovative growth of the nation. Such remarks came during a special ceremony held in Busan to unveil the government plans to build 2 new smart cities in both the port city and in Sejong. He said the government will spend about $3.3 billion to build the nation's first smart city in Busan by 2021, a city that connects traffic, safety, disaster prevention, administration, and medical care services in an organic and efficient way via South Korea's advanced information and communication network. The president also said the government is currently pushing to introduce a regulatory sandbox specifically tailored for building smart cities. Once the construction of the 2 testbed cities is successfully completed, President Moon said the government will seek to export the smart city concept as well.
우리의 가능성과 역량은 충분합니다. 부산과 세종이 세계 최고의 스마트 시티로 성공하면 대한민국 경제는 선도형 경제로 일어날 수 있습니다.
Alongside expressing his determination and confidence that the nation's power to lead the world's smart cities will begin in Busan, President Moon also pledged support for revitalizing South Korea's second-largest city. Busan's facelift will include 15 renewal projects to redevelop various parts of the city, making it more connected and more innovative, while also promoting balanced regional development. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
From AI to blockchain, technology is advancing rapidly and nurturing new businesses. The Korea International Trade Association released a report on 5 new sectors that will be a driving force this year and beyond. Kim Hae-sung gets us better acquainted with the selected industries.
Cybersecurity, smart healthcare, new industries and energy, eco-friendly new materials, and connected cars. The Korea International Trade Association says these are the top 5 new industries to watch for 2019. According to the report released Wednesday, the market for global cybersecurity is expected to grow to $146 billion by 2020 on the need for personal data protection and the wider use of biometric recognition systems and blockchain technology. This year, the smart healthcare and new energy industries are expected to grow to $172 billion and $143 billion.
The smart healthcare industry has been growing annually by double digits on average since 2015, as smart wearable healthcare devices become more diverse and accurate. Of course, companies are also investing heavily in new technology, like health-related AI, as the healthcare industry itself grows along with the aging population.
Kita also said that as governments and consumers become more environmentally conscious, they're emphasizing new energy and eco-friendly new materials, and that companies are investing in efficient methods of energy storage and in developing biodegradable plastics. As the 5th key industry, Kita pointed to connected cars, which use sensors and 5G connectivity to optimize operation, maintenance, and the convenience of passengers. The report says the connected car industry is expected to grow from $65 billion last year to $100 billion by 2020, and says Korean companies in particular can cash in on the industry through further development of the 5G network and driverless car technologies. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
South Korea and Russia signed a deal to implement the proposed 9-bridge strategy. Under the agreement, the 2 sides will look to strengthen bilateral cooperation in 9 key sectors, including gas, railways, and shipbuilding. One goal set for next year is to push up their trade volume to $30 billion. For details, let's turn to our Cha Sang-mi.
Seoul and Moscow signed a deal to bolster bilateral economic ties by agreeing on an action plan that will ultimately support South Korean firms doing business in Russia. South Korea's finance chief Hong Nam-gi and Russia's deputy prime minister Yuri Trudnev, who also serves as the presidential envoy to Russia's Far East, signed the pact in Seoul on Wednesday. The deal includes detailed action plans for future South Korea-Russia ties, including a 3-way cooperation among the 2 Koreas and Russia on railway, gas, and electric power. The signing comes after President Moon Jae-in had reiterated cooperation between the 2 countries when he addressed the State Duma during his state visit to Russia last year.
작년 동방경제 포럼에서 나는 9개의 다리 전략을 중심으로 양국의 협력을 제안했습니다.
And the 9 fields of two-way cooperation are namely shipbuilding, port construction, the Northern Sea Route development, gas exploration, railway construction, power generation, job creation, and farming and fishing industries. The two sides also discussed ways to push up bilateral trade volume to $30 billion by 2020 from last year's $24.8 billion and conclude their bilateral FTA on investment and service sectors. The Nine-Bridge strategy is part of President Moon's new Northern policy aimed at expanding cooperation with China, Japan, Russia, and Mongolia. 차상미, Arirang News.
The government aims to breathe new life into the fishing industry. To counter the decline in young workforce and create a sustainable sector, a 10-year plan has been devised. Oh Seung zooms in on the measures.
The Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries announced a plan Wednesday to turn South Korea's ailing fishing sector into an $89 billion industry by the year 2030. Finalised at a ministerial meeting, the plan is a response to a decline in the number of people working in fishing and the sector's growing shortage of young people in particular. The goal of the 10-year roadmap is to boost livelihoods and create 40,000 new jobs by building prosperous fishing communities. This involves a drive to renovate some 80 ports and harbours in the country starting this year, and by 2022 to modernise 300 fishing towns and ports. The Trade and Science Ministries will also join in to develop technologies that can increase fisheries production in a smart and eco-friendly way. A management system for coastal fishing will also be established, as will more effective ways to prevent the overfishing of certain species and illegal fishing. By creating a sustainable flow of production and consumption, the government will also nurture 100 local companies with the aim of creating some $3.4 billion worth of fisheries exports. With the plan, the government hopes to raise the industry's total annual revenue from the $59 billion recorded in 2016 to $89 billion by 2030. Oh Seung, Arirang News.
Boosting the job market has been a key goal for the Moon administration. Unfortunately, the latest employment report shows the overall situation in the nation remains grim. Ko Rooney help us look beyond the numbers.
More doom and gloom for job seekers in South Korea as the latest government figures paint a bleak picture for their prospects. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, the overall unemployment rate for last month was 4.5%. It's the highest figure for the month of January since 2010, when South Korea was struggling in the aftermath of the global financial crisis. Statistics Korea explained that more people were classified as unemployed because January and February are one of the main recruitment seasons, and so more people were looking for jobs. Unemployment was especially high among people older than 60 for a similar reason. The number of jobless increased from 180,000 the year before to 319,000 as seniors applied for new jobs offered by the government. And overall, around 26.2 million people were employed in South Korea in January. Only 19,000 new jobs were added on-year last month, the smallest on-year increase since August 2018. This figure is significantly lower than figures from 2017, when it jumped by more than 200,000 every month. Breaking it down by sector, the number of jobs went up in fields like health and social activities, but decreased in manufacturing, business facilities management, and wholesale and retail. Some experts blame the tough job market on Korea's slowing economic growth and the higher minimum wage. They say industries highly affected by the minimum wage hikes are struggling, and the government should raise pay more slowly. In Korea, the minimum wage was raised this year by more than 10% and by more than 16% the year before.
Yeah, I think the modification in the minimum wage is very crucial. And so the government has to apply a new kind of a flexible system in the minimum wage, depending on the industry, depending on the age group. I think the government has to differentiate the minimum wage.
Expert added that coming up with measures to boost the manufacturing industry are necessary because the sector is the main driver of South Korea's economic growth. Ko Rooney, Arirang News.
The country's top economic policymaker addressed the discouraging employment figures. Hong Nam-gi stressed job creation is the government's #1 priority and everything necessary will be done to turn things around. Kim Ji-yeon shares with us the finance chief's remarks.
Responding to the dismal employment figures for January, South Korea's Minister of Economy and Finance said he feels heavy responsibility and will make job creation a top priority in state affairs. Attending a meeting on Wednesday, Minister Hong Nam-gi said various economic factors at home and abroad are tough, but since job creation is such a vital factor in improving people's livelihoods, the Moon Jae-in administration will do everything in its power to create a combined 150,000 new jobs by the end of this year.
Most of the increases in the number of newly added jobs last month is due to the high base effect from the same period last year. It's a serious situation given that growth in the number of new jobs for the past 2 months has been in the single-digit range.
The minister said newly added jobs in the service sector have been recording double-digit growth, a silver lining compared to the employment slump seen in the manufacturing sector. He said the government will strive to strengthen the sector's competitiveness in the first half of the year. That includes unveiling measures to create or expand industrial semiconductor clusters by March. Among the measures to boost jobs, the minister said the government will add an extra 2,000 public sector jobs on top of the 23,000 it had originally planned to create. It will also shore up the services sector, particularly in the areas of health, distribution, contents, and tourism. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The amount of initial public offerings among Korean businesses in general have sharply waned in 2018. But the number of venture capital firms that went public for the first time has risen. Data released by Korea's Financial Supervisory Services on Wednesday showed IPO volume has amounted to $2.3 billion last year, a near 67% drop compared to the previous year. The financial regulator says a slump in the local securities market overall, with growing uncertainties in China-U.S. trade, was a decisive factor. It added a special fast-track program for promising tech companies implemented in 2015 has helped increase the number of IPOs among venture capital firms by enabling them to get listed in the country's second-tier bourse, the KOSDAQ, despite a net loss. South Korea's nuclear scientists have conducted a revolutionary experiment of creating an artificial sun, marking a significant feat in global attempts to develop clean nuclear energy. The National Fusion Research Institute said Wednesday that its fusion reactor managed to sustain a temperature of more than 100 million degrees Celsius for 1.5 seconds. It is the first time in the world that the temperature, around 6 to 7 times hotter than the actual sun, was sustained for longer than 1 second. This comes as scientists around the world are looking to develop nuclear fusion devices that could mass produce clean power, replicating the natural process that the sun uses to generate energy. Data by the nation's sports ministry suggests a growing number of women and elderly citizens are invested in trying to stay fit. The trend reflects increased number of exercise programs for this group, as well as greater awareness of the benefits of sporting activities. Won Jung-hwan has the full story.
A recent report shows that more South Korean women and senior citizens are participating in sports and exercise than before. According to data provided by the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism on Wednesday, 62.2% of Koreans did at least one 30-minute period of sports or exercise a week in 2018, up 3 percentage points from the previous year. The data also shows a general rising trend with participation up 16.7 percentage points since 2013. And there was a particularly noticeable rise in the number of women and senior citizens regularly doing sports or exercise. The number of women doing at least one 30-minute period of exercise a week rose to 62.8% compared to 61.6% for men in 2018. This is the first time that women have surpassed men in terms of participation in physical activities. Over 70s also raised their participation rate from 54.6% to nearly 60%. However, teenagers' participation dropped from 60.4% to 57.2%, raising concerns over the health of Korea's youth. A ministry official said that the latest trend of increased sports and exercise by women and seniors have been caused by rising health awareness among those groups and increased daily sports programs for them. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you'll need. Michelle, the southern provinces have been experiencing really poor air quality all day today.
Yes, Daniel, but fortunately, the air is expected to clear tonight and before sunrise as the cold winds are forecast to blow away the dust. Now, we will also see a large amount of snow during the night and along the east coast of the peninsula. And Thursday afternoon will be precipitation-free in the nation, while it'll be snowing over in Beijing with colder conditions than the seasonal average readings. And a cold morning is expected. This Seoul at -7 degrees Celsius. Busan and Jeju Island remains above 0 degrees. And Seoul will rise up to 5 degrees into the afternoon, while a lot of southern regions will linger between 8 and 10 degrees. And then there's snow again on Friday, and temperatures will range within the seasonal average. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
These are the stories we could pack into our newscast at this hour. Thank you for watching. Good day or good night, depending on your time zone.